Hello, my wonderful and amazing friends. How are you? I hope you are doing well, getting excited for summer. Are you wrapping up school? All those things. One of our coaching calls not too long ago, one of them said that one of the clients said that they are done with school June 1st, and they're going to have just a big fun summer of relaxing and enjoying and celebrating all their hard work all year. So hope you're doing well with whatever you want your homeschool to look like, all those fun things. So a couple weeks ago, I had been working on my workbook, the 30 Days to Ease into Homeschooling, and I had a few people edit it and look at it for me. And it was really interesting because there was a tiny little, like a paragraph or two where I was talking about overwhelm. And then I went into a concept I was teaching. And my friend who was looking through it said, is this a podcast episode where you talk a little bit about overwhelm? Because it would be awesome to link to it. And I went through a bunch of my podcast episodes and I couldn't see one. So how fitting. Let's do a podcast episode about overwhelm. So I was really surprised I didn't have one, and I'm excited to share that with you. So I've been pretty open, I feel like, in the fact that I'm not perfect, that I am human and I have all the range of feelings and emotions, and I had struggled with depression and different things like that, and being critical, controlling, all those types of things. And so as I was working on those, overwhelm didn't seem like a really important one to be working on. Like it was one of those things that I just kind of accepted, like I'm just going to be overwhelmed with life. Like this is just who I am. I have 7 kids. I homeschool. I manage our house and our yard. My husband works a lot and he travels. All the different stories that I have, right? And what's crazy is that most people would be like, yeah, that's super overwhelming. So it's just a story that it was really, really believable to me, that like I had bought into my story, other people bought into my story, and nobody had really questioned it. And so it was just one of the things that I thought, you know what, I am just going to be an overwhelmed person. So it was interesting that when I was getting certified to be a life coach with a life coach school, and we were practicing coaching each other in our weekly calls. And one of the girls, I was getting coached on overwhelmed and whatnot, and just like, oh my gosh, I have so much to do. This is so hard. I'm like now getting certified as a coach, and I'm going to start a business. I'm going to do all these things, and I have all these kids. And at the time, George was a baby, right? And it's just like so overwhelmed. Everybody lived at the house, everything like that. And it was the first time somebody just questioned my story, and she didn't let me just like, she didn't buy it like, yeah, you probably feel overwhelmed. She said something more along the lines of like, what if there are other women out there who have more kids than you and homeschool and they're not overwhelmed? So the fact that you have children and the fact that you homeschool can't actually make you overwhelmed, but it's your story about those things. So what if that was optional? What if you didn't have to be overwhelmed? And it was just one of those moments for me that it was like, what? This is optional? I don't have to be overwhelmed all the time. Like, I can decide to do something different. So it was one of those moments that just completely took me back. Now, it was interesting because it was wondering, like, asking myself, do I not need to feel overwhelmed all the time? Is this really a choice? Do I want to feel something else? And if I do, what do I want to feel? Now, I do want to take a side note here to say that there is nothing wrong with feeling all the feelings, and no feeling is off limits. You are human, and part of that experience is feeling all the feelings. This episode is more for those who are tired of feeling overwhelmed and are ready for a different feeling. Now, there is totally a time and a place to being like, I just need to sit here for a minute with overwhelm, or maybe that's anxiety for you or fear or something like that. So if that's where you are, great, put a pin in it and then come back to this episode when you are ready to start moving maybe just a teeny bit away from that, or try something different. So overwhelm is a feeling, sensation in your body that is created by a sentence in your brain, by a thought, right? Which for me is something along the lines of, I have so much to do. I have so much on my plate. My life is so busy, right? Anything like that. And when I have thoughts like that, then the feeling that comes up for me is overwhelm. And when I felt overwhelmed, what my go-to was usually a lot of inaction, of not doing any items on my to-do list, to maybe checking out on my phone, maybe just going and sitting there, doing anything but the things on my to-do list. So that I made it true that I have so much to do because I could never get caught up on anything, right? So I started to question everything after I got coached. So, what if I'm not overwhelmed? What if I can do the things I need and want to without feeling overwhelmed? As I got curious, I started to see ways to stop feeling overwhelmed with everything going on. And when I moved away from overwhelmed and started to stepping into curiosity, I started to come up with action items that helped me. So instead of creating a to-do list in my head, I don't know if anybody else does this, it's just like, I have so much to do, but like you don't actually know what you need to do. Well, that I was guilty of that. And so one of the things I did as I got curious is like, I wonder if I do have a lot to do. And I actually took the time to get out a pen and paper and write down what are the things that I needed to do. And that simple act for me showed me that I don't have as much to do as I thought I needed to do. Or if I see that my list is a little full on some days, then it helps me to get creative of how can I do that? Do I need to have some help if it's a lot of driving that day? If there, whatever we have going on, do I need to have some help with somebody to come in and help me? Maybe it's even just my kids helping, right? So if I'm like, oh, I have all this yard work and all this housework to do. Yeah, by myself, that would be pretty challenging. But when I bring in my kids, they can do a lot of the yard work, they can do most of the housework, all those types of things. And all of a sudden I'm seeing like, oh, that didn't take that long when we all did that together, right? Maybe for you, that's even hiring it out, having somebody come and help you with different things around the house or driving kids or anything like that. Another idea is also looking at this when you're getting curious of things on my list of maybe some of these things aren't really that important. So for me, as gross as this is, something that I've noticed that maybe on my to-do list that's just pretty low for me is washing my hair. It takes a lot of time, not the actual washing of my hair, but the drying of my hair. And I laugh because my husband would be like, just let it air dry. And if you see my hair as it's air dried, it dries real bad. As my sister calls it, it's like a scarecrow, right? Where it's like this weird, sticky, straight hair. It's real bad and it's hard to fix if I don't blow dry it, which takes a long time. So for me, I'm like, well, if I have so much to do, you know what? It saves me a ton of time every day. It's to not have to blow dry my hair. It's super long and thick, and that's a way like that I can just take it right off my list and do something different, right? So that simple shift of getting curious helped me to get out of my head and getting stuck in overwhelm and instead to start thinking of solutions. Because isn't that interesting when we have a feeling that maybe we could call a quote unquote negative feeling, our brain shuts down and we like there are no solutions. I'm just going to be overwhelmed forever. There's nothing I can do. And when we even just shift a little bit into curiosity, all of a sudden we can start getting curious and start seeing solutions, which then help us to learn how to solve all of our problems and things that come up. So such an interesting idea shift. So I want you to get curious if overwhelm is a feeling that you have often come up for you. If it is, I want you to get really curious of what is the story that you have that is creating that feeling. So dive in. A lot of times with overwhelms, I have so much to do. I don't have enough time to do all the things I want to do. Maybe even like I never get to do anything I want to do. I'm always stuck doing this, right? A lot of victim speech as well as we go into that, like, woe is me, I don't get to do anything. And that can create a lot of overwhelm. So we don't need to judge our story, just need to get curious about it. So whatever that sentence in your brain is, for like, I have too much to do, we're just going to get curious with it. What if you don't have too much to do? What if you actually have all the time you need to do those things? Are there things that you actually could just let go of? There was even something with overwhelmed too, of being like overstimulated, that could be overwhelming. So even sometimes with really good stuff, like, oh, I listen to all these podcasts and I listen to like I need to make all our food from scratch, and I need to whatever, like the stories that you have all these things to do, and you can be overstimulated and overwhelmed by so much good stuff that sometimes just like, ooh, I need to take a little break from podcasts for a hot minute. I need to take a little break from self-help books, and I just need to read a good story and just like help me to get out of this overwhelmed or overstimulated space. So really, as we get curious of what's going on, then we can start thinking of solutions, right? And we don't have to be stuck in this, like, I don't do anything because I'm so overwhelmed. There is also an option of just being okay with feeling overwhelmed. So remember, no emotion is bad, and no emotion or feeling can hurt you. So instead of like, oh, I have so much to do, I feel overwhelmed, and just kind of like go down that rabbit hole, one little step away from that is sometimes I feel overwhelmed, and that's okay. Right now, I feel overwhelmed, and that's not a problem. Overwhelmed, like I'm feeling overwhelmed and nothing has gone wrong. Anything like that, which is interesting because the feeling that that often generates is acceptance. And it's almost just surrendering to this, like, yeah, there's a sensation going through my body right now that's a little bit uncomfortable, and I'm just surrendering to it. I'm accepting it. So what's so interesting is that when this feeling comes of overwhelmed, we can learn to just check in with our body. What does the sensation feel like in our body? And is it a tightening in your chest? Is it a heaviness on your heart? Pressure in your head, or butterflies in your stomach, right? Of just like, ooh, or weight on your back, right? Of like, that is overwhelm. And it's just a feeling. And when we just allow ourselves to feel that and surrender to that feeling, it allows our body the space to process it, to be able to then let it go. So, and what I want you to take away today is a couple things. There's nothing wrong with feeling overwhelmed. No feeling can hurt you. You can lean into it and even just accept it. Like, I feel overwhelmed right now, and nothing has gone wrong. And also getting curious. If you have a story like I have so much to do, which is creating a lot of overwhelm, to get really curious about, could I let this story go? Is it mandatory to be a homeschool mom and be overwhelmed? Is it possible I can to be those things, and I can do my hobbies and interests and raise my children and be just an awesome human and not be overwhelmed? Is that a possibility? I promise you it is. And it doesn't mean you have to get there today or tomorrow or even next week or next month, but just even start playing with that idea. Like, I can feel overwhelmed and nothing has gone wrong. And when I'm ready, I can also let it go. So that's what I want to leave you with today. I hope you have an amazing week, and I will talk to you next time.